Hi, welcome back to the Pink Lion podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Mark McGowan, also known as the Chicago Medium. And while Mark has spent years connecting with spirit and helping others experience that connection, what I really wanted to understand was how it all began. Before someone becomes known as a medium, there's usually a period of trying to make sense of what we're feeling. There's doubt, there's curiosity. There are those moments when you start asking yourself, is this my imagination? Is it my intuition? Or is somebody else or something else actually happening here? So today I want to go back to the beginning with Mark. We're going to talk about when he first became aware of spirit, how he learned to recognize the language of his own mediumship, what helped him begin to trust what he was receiving, and how that connection has evolved over the years. I also want to explore something I think is incredibly important. What happens when mediumship moves beyond simply receiving information and becomes about serving the person sitting in front of you? Because behind every reading is usually someone who loves someone, misses someone, or is trying to make sense of a loss. After years of sitting in that space with people, I'm curious about what Mark has learned. Not only about spirit and the other side, but about grief, love, and what it means to be human. Mark, welcome to Pink Lion. I'm really happy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Excellent. Where do we begin? Way down here, down. Okay, so take me back, way back, before you were the Chicago Medium. Who was Mark then?
So, I grew up in Chicago, hence the name Chicago Medium.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, I actually lived pretty close to the inner city. So it was a bit of a rough neighborhood. And I had lived in a house that wasn't always so peaceful. So for me, it sounds a little strange, but my ally really was the spirit world as early as 3 years old.
I find that fascinating and amazing. What did that feel like for you, and how the heck do you remember 3? I don't.
Well, the crazy part is I can remember something even before that, which is getting really, really sick, and my parents thought I was going to die, and that was 9 months old.
That's so crazy to me.
Yeah, I remember. I could still see images of it and the feeling of it and burning up and all these things. But we fast forward to when I was 3 years old. I remember this, as I always say, like it was yesterday. I was napping. It was like 5 p.m. It was winter. And all of a sudden, something, I can't explain it, but told me to sit up. And I sat up in my bed and I looked out the doorway and I could see about 20, 30 feet away my grandmother. But my grandmother had already passed away. So I'm like, oh. And I had just this feeling of so many different things. One, although people might say they're scared, I was not frightened. I was excited, like a bottle of champagne, or like when people drink some kind of caffeine, some kind of an excitement like that, rather than a terror.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes people get that confused when they interact with spirit, but that was what I got. And then she would disappear, reappear, disappear, reappear, disappear, reappear. And now I look back realizing, when you have little kids, some people play peekaboo, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
felt like she was playing with me like a grandmother would. She was teaching me literally mechanics of mediumship way before, just so many things. I understood that I had this ability to see what we call objective clairvoyance, that I could see them as if they're in the room,
Mm-hmm.
but also thoughts, and this thing called claircognizance, a kind of a knowing, because it doesn't really make sense unless you have claircognizance to say, I know that this is real. It kind of helps. And this overwhelming sense that I still live on and I'm here and I'm not going anywhere and all these other things that hit you in a split second. So I was like, wow. And I just knew that my environment in my house, my neighborhood, and then the future was going to be stressful and rough.
Hmm.
So for me, this is quiet knowing that I had a little help from the other side at that very early age. I did go to family members and tell them. My dad listened to me. He's an iron worker, atheist. He told me to shut up. He said, and I said, why? And he said, there's no such thing as heaven. He said, maybe though, maybe you are interacting with a different spirit. There was a woman that used to live here. It could be the next door neighbors. It was like so strange that he could believe in like ghosts or spirits, but not a wonderful place that exists. It was so, and I'm like, wow. And I said to him, like, it's the strangest. It's strange that you would go there. That's where your mind is. But that's exactly what he kept the rest of his life. That was what he maintained, and that kind of was the beginning for me, um, before I became what I am today as like a professional.
So, can I go back to that piece with
Sure.
dad? Because I find that fascinating that he was so willing to believe these other people were spirits, but not his own mom. That's so weird. Okay. I know. Um, so the language, like let's talk about language, spirit language. So young child, or let's just say under 10, these things are happening to you. And how did you understand what the language was? What did that feel like inside of you?
Well, it was internal and
Mhm.
external for me,
Okay.
and I think that when I teach mediums, I want them to have that, not internal, but both external and internal.
Hmm.
And so for me, I always had this knowing, and we now label that language as claircognizance, to know on a psychic, mediumistic, ESP, extrasensory perception type of level, right? I always had that thread that I felt a part of me wasn't separate from the other side. And that's not taught. What they're teaching is that we have to raise up and they have to come down. And I was never told that. I've never told that. I said, I was always had this feeling, this knowing that I was also a part of that other side. And sometimes you hear spiritual people say we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Hmm.
And then we get to mediumship, and then it feels like we forget that. And then we are teaching as if we're humans having a spiritual experience. So for me, it's internal, external. But I know sometimes when I teach, a lot of my students may have had a prior class where it's all internal. And so they're trying to feel and trying to think and trying to pay attention, and they're not having both the external, internal, objective, subjective. But to me, it was not just a feeling, it was thoughts. And I do believe how we perceive this thing called claircognizance is actually stronger than feelings.
Hmm.
So I've even had mediums that never felt. They have like almost no clairsentience. So I do believe it's the we should emphasize claircognizance and knowing more so than how I feel when I'm with spirit, because I do believe every medium I've ever met, no matter what their abilities showed us, whether they could hear, see, or not, they always had that I know or thought something like that internally. So I think that that would be more precise, that I had more of a knowing and some feelings. But I never was afraid, scared, terrorized, all these other things. I would say that I think that some people may watch too many movies or have their own belief systems that may be interfering with what they experience. And there's an excitement, but that excitement should be more of a celebratory type of excitement. Like I'm going to graduate and you're excited and you're like, oh, I think I'm nervous. But it's not, it shouldn't be a terror. So for me, that interaction with my grandma wasn't just her. I would go to the backyard by myself, and there was a spirit guide.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, "Whoa, where did you come from?" And I would pick up a stick, and I remember it, and I would fence the spirit guide. We would play swords, and
That's
my dad came out and caught me, and I would put that I didn't want to talk about. I
yeah.
didn't want to talk about. So there was something claircognizantly I knew there was something different with the guide than there was with grandma that I had to be more protective, more private about, which is very strange. But that was that claircognizance, that knowing, and I didn't want that. That was me. That was my spirit guide. That was personal, and I could trust, and I could, bounce things off of, and so that was fascinating for me. So it wasn't just purely grandmother. It was I had at least one guide that I interacted with, and I would totally be lost, like completely lose myself. I could see, and it was very different. Um, Almost no feeling
Mhm.
at all. Um, a th- I wouldn't even use the word thought, more like a knowing. But the colors I would see were so unbelievable. I didn't get that with my grandma. I only got it with him, and there were these wonderful hues of purple, red, and magenta, and all these other wild stuff going on. But a human aspect of the guide, which is,
Interesting.
yeah, like I understand you're young, and I felt like we were both a team instead of a genie in a bottle. Yeah. So when we teach guides and angels, even in any religion, honestly, we treat them as genie in bottles. What can I get from you? Could I get a raise? Could I find these lost keys? Could you do this? Could you do that? Why aren't you?
Mhm.
And that's never what was taught to me. It was, I'm vicariously learning through you, Mark, even though you're not even doing readings, you're not helping, you're a kid. I'm learning that, and I can experience that here. And I'm not even sure he was able to experience that over there. So that was wild. Like, okay, you're wise, but you're vicariously growing a little bit, even through my human experiences here in the backyard, playing with me
With sword sticks.
with sword sticks. And I would hide the sticks
Where did you hide them? Under the
in the
ivy?
rose bushes,
Oh.
and that was smart because if you put your hand in, cut, cut, cut. And so
Yeah.
no one was going to put their hand in there. I mean, that was pretty smart. I'm not that smart, so it must have been the guy that was helping me through that. But one more thing before I forget. When I was in school about that age, about 7 or 8, it was really maxing out here. I swear to you that I feel like another guide was helping me through my tests and my quizzes
That's
because
it.
I did not have a room to study
Mhm.
or read. I didn't have that. It was just chaos. My other siblings had privacy, quiet rooms. I didn't have that. So what I would get there, and I would get the presents, and it's not definitely not grandmother. There was another guide, not the one I was playing with. I thought it was a second guide, and we were working on. I'm like, I really need your help because I don't know if I could face failing a grade. I don't know if I'm strong enough to overcome that mentally. I'm going through so much here at home and in my life, and they would work with me a little bit.
That's interesting. What you lacked in actual human connection, you
Yes,
actually got from the spirit world. That's very interesting to me. So, is that the experience where you felt like maybe something is actually happening here? I mean, would it
I would. I
you
would say, yeah, I would say the 3 years old because I got rejected by for they usually say men really need the approval of dad, women need approval of mom, more so we need approval of both parents.
Mhm.
But that's usually kind of the thing, and he totally rejected it, right?
Yeah.
So I go, well, I don't need your approval. If I don't need my dad's approval at 3 years old, why would I need any other human's approval?
Interesting that you went that route to me.
Yeah.
Like, as another medium, I'm like, this is fascinating. Because this is a level of intelligence or like cognizance that like you don't normally have at 3.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering how much you pulled over from the spirit world when you came through in this carnation. So, like, do you have any memories from a previous life at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My email name's Demosthenes. That's a past life name. That's a
Wow.
real figure in history. That's even crazier. So Demosthenes, my gosh.
I just opened something up.
Oh yeah, well, get your popcorn.
I
Okay, so we have to kind of fast forward a bit to when I'm 22 and I'm in martial arts. So I boxed in high school, was always into the martial arts stuff. My martial art teacher was born on the same month and day as me, August 13th.
Mhm.
This is important because there's an asteroid in astrology discovered August 13th. It is Iris, and the goddess that moves between heaven and earth. Sounds like a spirit guide to me, sounds like a medium to me. So that number 813 to me is symbolic of mediumship. So this is a synchronicity. He is literally a personification of a synchronicity to me because he's sharing my birthday, August 13th. My grandfather, my dad's dad, died August 13th. He then has a child, which looks just like me. My great aunt looks identical, dies August 13th. So August 13th is haunting me. My brother is also born August 13th, 2 years apart. So all these synchronicities, like, hey, dummy, you're a medium, right? So I get to martial arts, and one day he goes into trance. I don't even know what trance is. It's after class, but he does. I knew he was psychic. He wasn't doing professional readings, and he's doing trance. That is so incredibly rare. You'll almost never hear that. And he goes, "You were Demosthenes in a past life," and that was it. And I'm like, "What?" So I researched it, and it was like really, he wasn't always right about a lot of things. So I was like, "Ugh, I don't know, man." I researched. We have tandem life experiences. I was terrible in school, but I was like a savant in public speaking. I would win nonstop, and everyone would be mad because they're like, if you're so good, why don't you do good in the other grades and another blah blah blah. Demosthenes in 360 BC, he was a kid. His family kind of was torn apart. He had to learn how to be a public speaker and win in the court of law his family's estate. And I've also gone through a family estate issue where I was in charge of fixing everything just like he did. And he becomes a great orator, he becomes a great speaker. So so I'm like, wow, these are really good, but it's not just there. Demosthenes is close to this island called Samothraki in Greece. And at that point in time, there was this place where you can go to where you can merge with your higher self. About 300, the late 300 BC era, anywhere around the world, if you were a slave, if you were a woman, man, didn't matter, you would fly there to this island in Greece, and you would look at the water to face your shadow self, try to let go of anything that doesn't serve you, and then you would sit in a chair. There would be women I believe they would use drums and in a circle, and then the men would be on the outer circle, forming a circle as protectors. And you'd sit in a chair, and you simply say, "Okay, I'm going to try to merge with my higher self and see what happens." They call this eros gamos. However, it was changed when the Romans came, and they made it about, unfortunately, sex. And this is where we get twin flame from. So now
Mm,
they said, no, only a man and woman, or you can only that union can produce this thing called sacred union, which now has been turned into twin flame. But originally, you could be basically your own twin flame on your own, or merge with your higher self. You didn't have to have another person to have a physical interaction with to do that. You could if you wanted to, but you didn't have to.
mm,
And he was very close. And the other thing is, during this time, Demosthenes becomes an adult, and he begs um, Alexander the Great not to unionize or consolidate all these different places, all these different parts, especially Greece. He begs them to keep them independent and not overtake them. Alexander the Great's mom was a high priestess in charge of the ritual of your higher self. So I'm like, I don't think that Demosthenes was a full blown out medium in that lifetime, but he certainly merged with his higher self and had some kind of spiritual, he had an absolute a personal and professional relationship with them. And so I'm like, maybe this is a little carryover. Again,
Interesting.
because I can look at my birth chart and I see similarities there. So, and he looks identical, like very similar to me in build, and almost facial structure because there's images of him. So I'm like, whoa, that seems right to me. So
Uh,
yeah. So
that's
yeah, past life, yes.
and really but you didn't obviously make that connection when you were younger,
No,
but just in your 20s and
yes,
later and all that. So none of this has frightened you. None of it's scary. Your parents are not supportive. You're sort of really understanding now. You have two guides and grandma. Did anything happen in your teenage years, or was that just sort of a period of void?
yeah. Well, much like a lot of mediums when they're young, it does kind of. I don't know if I want to use the word quiet down. I guess that's the best word I could use.
Yeah.
I don't know if we understand it because, like, when you're a medium, you're also psychic.
Mm-hmm.
And that means if you're giving me more noise in my environment,
Not
is
gonna.
it really quieting down or are you just over flooded, So we used to say it quiets down when you're a teenager because of the hormones and stress. But I think there's just so much thrown at you at that age. I really didn't have I don't have any recall from age 14 to 18, 19 where I had anything really.
Right. Well,
But
you
I think
also weren't seeking it out either. You
no,
focused in on it, and you're right. We have so much noise on the outside that we can't even hear ourselves.
yes. I will tell you that much like a lot of people who have some kind of, if you want to call it empath, medium, whatever, healer, whatever word, intuitive, they get into escapisms, and I did. Drugs, alcohol, smoking, you name it, because I feel like it's there. You're used to touching this bliss,
Hmm.
and I was. Now it's gone. So
Hmm.
I'm chasing it again with drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever at 18. That's the closest thing I can get to heaven. So I think that's important to know when you're reading somebody or you're meeting somebody and they have those problems. It could be because they have no outlet, healthy outlet for this empath, this intuitiveness, this mediumistic side to them. So we can really help people avoid a horrible life down the road if we could just understand maybe, let's just refocus, do something a little bit more healthy and not self-destructive here, and that could overcome so much.
Well, yes, I see what you're saying. I'm internalizing it a little bit differently. Let me just like play it back at you real quick. So we talked about the internal and external information, right, that we receive. So our clairs and then our humanness, basically. So rather than turning inward to connect to ourselves and our higher power, source, God, whatever, our guides, the spirit world in general, which is who we are internally, we turn or we source it out externally to try and get a similar feeling. Um, that's interesting. Very interesting to me. And the reason why it's interesting to me is because people just tune into their own senses, they would get that feeling. If they just got to know themselves, they would find self respect and self love. But maybe that's their whole purpose. Maybe that's their journey. Maybe they're supposed to go through that in order to figure it out or be presented the opportunity to figure it out and they haven't yet. Not sure. But I have another question for you. Of course. And it's about spirit and how this happens to you now. So when spirit enters your awareness now, okay, what is what's actually happening inside of you?
So at this point, I know not to have any quote unquote starting point or specific sense because I have all the senses that are available.
Mhm.
So sometimes it'll be very internal, sometimes it's external, but it's usually never the same.
So give an example of one versus the other for the audience.
So let's just say it's a professional reading.
Mhm.
I will definitely have one most of the time where I can almost see them in my living room walking around. Whereas sometimes I'll have another spirit where it's totally subjective in my mind's eye a bit more. And barely, that's about it. Maybe some subtle emotions or thoughts, memories. And then there'll be quite a few in the background there where you just kind of really have that claircognizance, which is why it's so important. Where I'm like, well, I know I have a grandfather because I saw him and I could get his emotions and even cause a passing. And I can smell the fragrance of the aftershave or smell the cigarettes from the aunt. But I know I have 10 here. And it is so important to understand that with not just mediumship, but spirit communication. I've always been, I don't know if I would use the word taught, but informed that the spirit world has free will. So they get to also choose which clairs they may want to have an interaction with.
Mhm.
And some do not want to, even if you are clairvoyant, they may not want to or capable of at this moment of utilizing your clairvoyance. So for me, it's all the senses. But I'm really passive to allow them to, if they want to just use a fragrance to smell and to taste pasta, and that's all they want, then I give them that freedom and I don't try to force them to get into a specific sense or clair because I want that. I believe that I try to give them as much free will and freedom that they wish and trust that if there is evidence and that's destined to get that evidence, that they will give it to me. Because if they're able to have the intelligence that there's a reading at 1 o'clock and
Mhm.
I'm a medium, why wouldn't I surrender almost all free will to them to trust that there's as little evidence or as much evidence as they're willing to give it to me? So I think that, you know, a lot of people will say, well, I see them, so that's what I'm waiting for. Or I'm a feeler. I've cried my whole life, so, and this one didn't give me any feelings, so there must be something wrong. It's not how it goes.
Right.
Um, I would just suggest that almost everybody probably is capable of all the senses and having that experience internally, externally with feelings, thoughts, sensations that you kind of let go of a rigidness to it where it has to be your way in an order of your own understanding rather than letting them have a little bit more autonomy. So that's just mediumship in the professional sense, not necessarily spirit communication, which is even a broader topic.
I guess it is. Yeah. Was it always clear to you or did you have to develop that over time?
Great question. Well, it's a winding road. So to me, it was
I'm winding my fastball up for you. So
it was very, there for me and important to me until teenage years, and then priorities changed from 14 to 18 and a half. Then it came back a little bit, but again, I'm in college, so priorities. I don't have the priority to be there, and I don't have really anyone that I know that could give me any sense of what this is really, except once in a while I would see it on TV and I would see a psychic detective. I go, oh, I can do that. And
Mhm.
I might say it to a sibling and they go, no, you can't. Like, oh, what do I care what you think? So that's kind of that. Um, and then when I'm at 2000, well, I'm about 22 years old. It came back again with the martial art teachers I discussed earlier. So it's there again, but there's no work. There's no classes. There's no work. There's no outlet again. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, what am I going to do here? Again, so my relationship to the spirit world isn't as strong. So I don't feel as intuitive. I have to adjust to what life circumstances is giving me. They say, get an education, get a job, do all these things. So no. In fact, from about 2002 to 2010 ish,
Mm-hmm.
I would get a lot of readings. So I was understanding structure just by being a client, and I'm very young. And that's the only reason I'm getting readings, which is very unusual. You won't hear that from many people. But this lady's like, I remember it. It's so bad. But I go there and I can't wait for my reading. I can't wait for my reading, but I'm reading her and I'm getting the worst feeling
Oh no.
inside of me, but I can't say it. So she sits down and nothing makes sense what she's saying to me at all. Nothing makes sense. And she gets frustrated and says, "Well, what are you here for?" I go, I love readings." And she goes, "Oh, well, what do you want to do the rest of your life?" I'm like, "Well, I would love to be a reader one day, but I don't think that's going to happen. There's just no jobs." And she's like, "Well, read me now." And I go, can't. That can't meant, oh, I definitely could, but you're not going to like what I have to say. So she says, well, I have a class, come to the class. There's a bunch of people there. I go to the class. They're all sitting in a circle. And she goes, okay, everyone take a turn. This is the direction I get. And so I say what I say to the person. And then they say no. But you can tell on their face it's a yes. So I'm like, oh my God, they're lying to me. And the teacher starts laughing. Who, again, she just read me about the day before. So I'm looking at jealousy, projections. I'm looking at the ugly side and the not so light and fluffy stuff of this topic. I'm
Right.
experiencing it. So I leave. And then I'm like, oh boy, there's no hope. But even with that disappointment, um, I can't logically, most people would say, I'm not psychic, I'm not a medium because I got to know and all this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not me. I said, no way. I know that they're lying and I know that this is jealousy and all these other things, and they're not going anywhere in that class. But nobody believed me. Okay. So 2010, 2011, my dad does pass away. He does visit me. I go, maybe I should think about this again. But this is where the story makes sense. I get a job at a crystal shop. I'm there. I'm just doing readings. I don't even call myself really a medium. It's just readings, right? No tools. Who comes in but the lady as my client, and she wants the longest reading possible. So she pays. I'm like, okay. And I'm just sitting there like I have pocket aces, like and I give her a great reading, like one of the greatest readings. I go back 6 generations with spirits. I talk about this, that, the other. And I say at the end, you don't remember me, do you? She goes, no. I go, you don't know me. I don't look familiar. You don't know my name. She says, no. I go, you really, really don't remember me coming to your class 8 years ago? She's like, no, where was that at? I'm like, okay, never mind. That was spirit saying, if you just trust and have faith in us, even when something like this goes wrong, we'll have your back. And I'm like, whoa, that taught me so much. But it did seem to not, I can't say that, you know, as being an adult now, that was always like how I have it today. It wasn't because of life circumstances. But as you said, I think that was destiny, that we have to go through those tough times.
We do. And I mean, I even had to stumble my way through it all too. I mean, I feel like there are some people who choose to try and understand it themselves, right? I'm not one of those people. I want to find somebody, a mentor, to help me understand things, because for me it was very confusing. Of course, I became aware of this later in life. Of course, I made the connections since then to my younger years, but I don't remember it like you. I don't remember that stuff. um, in a certain way. So it's impressive to me that you do. But I'm a person that, like you, wants to get it right, but I also like feel like I needed help to understand it. And I feel like it's good for people to have mentorship in this way so they learn the ethics, they understand what the communication, how sacred it is, and like what you're doing when you're speaking to a person who has somebody who's passed on the other side and they're grieving, and how to be delicate about it, you know? Not that you have to you just have to hold space for them. You don't have to like absorb their energy or anything like that. But anyway, did you ever go through, I mean, I guess you didn't really go through the I'm making it up stage like I did. Like yeah, you didn't go through that at all. And like, I feel like some people though, who, because you're unique in my opinion, and mediums will say that, like they will say like I've had this since I was, a child, and that makes me special or something. It's like we all have it, right? Like I mean, you believe that too, I assume, based on what you said. Not that we're good at it, but we all have the capability.
I know we all have the capability for spirit communication, which is different than mediumship. So spirit communication could be this wide open umbrella, um, but mediumship is a bit different, and I know it's super complex, way more complex than we know.
We're
Uh,
not gonna go down that rabbit hole today.
that's fine.
No, no, no. But once you accepted that you did have this, people like your family unit wasn't, very supportive or whatever, and like you accepted this ability, and you started to develop it. Like, what did life look like after that for you? Did you
Very different.
practice circles? Did you find people? Like, what happened?
No, so again, so like here I am at 22 years old, I'm in martial arts, and along the way I would have like meet someone who's into a book by a psychic. I would read it cover to cover. And that's
Mhm.
kind of it. And I would get readings from other pros, psychic detectives, tarot readers. Didn't matter if you did a reading. I don't care if it's what tool, not tool, in tool, whatever. I would get a reading from you because I loved it so much. So I'm learning structure and how they handle clients. I'm learning a lot that way. That was my classroom mostly. That's a lot of readings. Fairs, people who are famous. It didn't really matter to me. Um, but there's no jobs. So in the meantime, I'm getting my degree in psychology, but I'm also trying to learn the spiritual side. Wayne Dyer was a big influence of me, a really, really big influence. And that spiritual side to me is the reason why I worked in clinical psychology as a mental health professional. I really do feel that he was like an earth guide to me. I've met him a couple times, which is a great honor. He was really awesome to me. Um, but so I feel mediums will go to a practice circle or a classroom that I've taught hundreds of mediums. Okay. They don't It's not as common as you think that they feel that they need a spiritual side.
It's
And
so
I
weird to me.
and the ethics, they don't seem to feel that's important as it should be.
Did you say evidence?
Ethics.
Oh, ethics.
So, um,
Mm.
I really didn't ever develop in a practice circle ever. In 2010, my dad passes away, and I said maybe I just had this knowing again I should do it. I go to a store. They go, okay, we'll give you a job. Here's an audition. Do well in the audition. I know. I always had this baptism by fire a lot mentality in my life, no matter what it was. And that's not always it brings a lot of bumps and bruises.
Mhm.
But I always saw myself better than what anyone else could see me. That's just the way it is. I'm also a Leo, so that probably also plays into it. But the very strange thing that you'll never hear, I'm a professional in the shop. The lady decides to do a circle after I become a professional. She wants us as the readers. There's other readers in there. She wants us to join a circle with her. She really has no training in mediumship.
Interesting.
And we kind of say no. I said yes to be at a what you know, like what else am I gonna do? So I said sure, it sounds fun, but the other one said no. So I never developed in a practice circle ever. But we fast forward time. I've done about 3,000, 4,000 readings by the time we get to 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm also working in psychology full time and doing readings on my days off. A thought comes to me. I'm on social media. I'm looking at YouTube. I'm seeing mediums that aren't from the United States. And I find Mavis Patilla, one of the most recognized names in modern mediumship. She was the most tenured professor at the Arthur Findlay College, which is what was considered the gold standard of mediumship. But she talked like a poet. And there was a different side to her style. And I just was like, well, I want her to read me. I just want the experience. But she touched my soul and spirit. I don't know. I can't even logically say it. I didn't even know if she could help me. But I told her, could you help me just look at what I can do? I can't afford any of the mentorships were year-long ones. They were really, you know, and she said, I'll informally help you. So I got to know her personally, how she thinks, that I don't think I've met a lot of her ex-students, and I know how she thinks and how it was taught to her in ways that they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But she said the reason is because I see in you what I saw in my own teacher, Mark Gordon, which is the highest compliment I've ever gotten in my entire life. Gordon Higginson is considered one of the finest mediums that ever lived. And she told me, just by reading me, not me auditioning, just reading my colors and my aura, she said, you will do what Gordon did, but even better.
Interesting.
So I said, well, I don't know what that means. I don't know. But I feel that she was really emphasizing the critical thinking, the common sense, the ethics, and the spiritual development of the medium. So that is still lacking today, probably more so than it did 10 years ago. I think we have a drop off currently. So I'm hoping to revive that more in mediums in the future, and hopefully my influence does that.
So when you're with a student and you do teach, you do mentor people, you have some classes that are starting up. I'm actually going to be taking your aura class. Admittedly, this is going to be great for me. I'm so excited. I'm like, what? You see colors? And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm starting to see people's colors. I'm like, I have no idea what they mean. So teach me, master. Oh, wise one. Um, so what do you consider, or what makes something evidence rather than simply like a beautiful message?
So because I called Mavis an informal inspiration or informal mentor, she's really the one that gave me rules. I didn't have really rules. I just was always given what I was given.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never emphasizing a quote unquote message naturally. So that's a little new, but it was very helpful because there's a lot of people that I feel really hunt for messages. Okay. And even clients they want messages. Evidence should be about the spirit communicator, and the medium should have control or command, describing something about the spirit communicator, whether it's physical description, personality, maybe some hobbies, some memories, medical ailments, cause of passing. These things of evidence about when they were alive is mostly the message, but not strictly. So when we get to messages, sometimes messages are actually hidden within the evidence.
Right. That's how
So, but this changed for me when I started teaching, because I would have students give pieces of evidence. Well, they were funny and they had a medical ailment that caused a passing. What's the message? And they're asking the spirit world for a message.
like that's the first rule in Fight Club. Don't ask spirit for anything.
But this has been kind of a popular thing. And Mavis said that's a big American thing for the last few decades, Mark. I said, oh, really? And I started seeing it with clients. They would say, what's the message? What's the message? My own family members. God love them. I'll say it. She's not going to like this, but my own mom is like that.
Wow.
I would have visits of some of her family members, and she would say, well, what are they trying to say? I'm like, you're looking for a message? And I would say to her, don't you think that them just caring enough to say hello, that type of love, is good enough? And she would just look at me. Not sure.
It's
Not sure.
kind of a big deal out there, like crossing the realm to come say hi. Don't know about you, but it takes a lot of energy to do that.
Yeah. So message to me, um, this gets tricky because sometimes there's quote unquote mediums that will say, I do messages, and it's actually not from the spirit world at all. So this is a problem. So when we have evidence and we have command that it's coming from a particular spirit communicator, it has to be in the affirmative. I can't just throw out information and put the onus and responsibility on the person getting read to figure it all out. It has to be that. And that's really the way it's probably the best way to ensure that I'm not in my head, that I'm really in tune with the spirit communicator, that I'm describing something about how they lived. And then once in a while, you'll have evidence about the person and what they're going through now.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that takes a while, that they should at least try and endeavor before it's just always about what's going on in the person's life as evidence of the spirit communicator, that we have some experience of describing a spirit communicator. But I'm not going to dismiss that if I say, Cindy, you spilled coffee at noon, it could possibly still be evidence. But it can't be the only thing I've ever done. That's the only way I have evidence of the spirit world. And from
Sometimes
beginning,
past, present, and future. So they can see everything. They can be everything everywhere all at one time. So like, I don't know about you, but I follow their lead and I'm trying to remain fluid, as I know that you are too. There comes a piece where people may not understand something. I certainly don't want to know what the hell they're talking about because I don't have context. I've read you and you said it's not for you to figure out. I understand it completely fine. And I was like, cool, I'm moving on. Can we talk about sitters for a second?
sure, one of my favorite topics in mediumship.
I know you've sat across from a lot of grieving people, you know, and it is difficult. It can be very, very difficult. But what has that experience taught you? Like, what has grief taught you?
That no two living things experience it the same.
Yeah.
But all living things absolutely will go through it because it's something that our body needs to grieve, to heal and process. It's something inherent,
Mm-hmm.
which is really important for a bunch of reasons. One, there are sometimes new mediums that think they're not supposed to grieve.
My gosh, right.
And um, not too long ago, probably 10 years ago, there was a medium that contacted me, and they were a professional, and they told me their last parent died that day. And without saying it, I said, you can grieve. Like, don't let these people tell you you can't. And she's like, how did you know? I just knew.
Mm-hmm.
She's old, she can't. And I was the only one giving her like the permission.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you know that the next phase of living is real doesn't mean that we won't grieve. It may not be exactly the same as others, but your even mediums grieve. Um, Atheists grieve. People that may say to you that they're in grief sometimes it's a little bit more complex,
Mm-hmm.
and others are in denial. So they're all over the place with how they grieve. And sometimes people will grieve a year later after a passing.
That happened to me.
Yeah.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah. I like stuffed it down until like that thing became a volcano and just blew open the doors. It was my stepdad and many years ago. Um, but then this time with my father-in-law passing, the grief opened a door for me. It was a catalyst for this whole thing. So I'm just curious. I was just curious when you're sitting across from somebody because you had a completely different experience. Yours was way early on. You were completely aware going through your life. I was like, do, walking around in the dark, and then boom, door flings open and smacks me in the head. I'm like, oh, there's a door here, you know, type of thing. And then you have people who are grieving in many different stages. They're sitting in front of you. Yeah, I don't know. Has there ever
Some
been anything to have you ever turned away a client because they were fresh in grief?
no, some because what I always put as a professional
Mhm.
that you should always give it time. If somebody passed away and they want to come, you should wait. And sometimes that's 3 months, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it depends on them. But if they haven't, because sometimes in early in my career, really early on, I would definitely have a lot of people recommend.
Yeah.
And it was like the day of the next. I mean, it was so fresh. And unfortunately, there was quite a few that refused to tell me when somebody passed. And it was really soon,
Mhm.
really soon. And so it's so strange because sometimes their grief, which could in a reading, it feels as if it's its own thing, own living thing, like this energy, right? Sometimes it can hamper and sometimes it can help.
Mhm.
So it's like, it's so wild. But I want to say this shortly. I had a reading once, and I used to let people come in off the street to my apartment and be in my living room. That doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
But and they were tough. I mean, they wouldn't even budge. Barely a yes or no, maybe a head nod.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I don't care. You can sit there in silence. I know I'm right. So I had a young male, pretty much didn't respond the whole reading. Okay, it's over. A week later, I got another male, but he's older, middle age. At the end, he says, "That was okay. That was pretty good. I've had other readings, and but the reason I'm here today is because there was a boy you read a week ago." And I said, "I don't remember. I did a lot of readings." And he said, "No, no, no. You saved his life." He said he was literally going to end his own life, but we recommended he come to you. His dad passed away tragically, and he didn't want to live anymore, and now he wants to live. And I'm like, well, that's a lot to put on me. Crazy enough, though, I think it might have been the next day. I was buying coffee, and there he was,
It was meant
and
to be.
he was meant, and he sees me, and we're like, whoa, and you can just tell. Like I wasn't even sure if that was real, him saying that to me about somebody else, but to do that, and I said to myself, I have no other accomplishments I need in this work. I this is what I this moment I don't need to do anything else. I'm completely satisfied with my mediumship at that moment. That was it. That was 10 years ago. So right now we're just extra. Everything's extra because that made everything that I've gone through worth it. Everything I've gone through. That touched me so much. But
Yeah,
that was the power of all this.
it's that ripple effect.
Yes.
But you and I have had conversations, surprise everybody, on the side. So he does mediumship, psychic work, he teaches, but there's also another area, something I know very little about, astrology. I am not that person. I'm like, "You're a Leo? What does that mean?" I mean, it's not that bad, but, it's, like, not something because I don't have if I could just do this, in my life, I may have more time to do things like read books and, kind of study this a little bit more, but I wear a lot of hats and I'm perfectly happy with my life right now as it is. So I would lean on somebody like you to be like, what does this mean? Astrology, talk to me. So, what are the different expressions? Is it like a similar intuitive awareness, or do you have charts that you go to? Like, what is that all about?
So, mediumship, psychic ability, we could argue healing, astrology,
Hmm.
all exist within the collective unconscious.
Okay.
But there might be a slight intuitive knowing that can help you in your astrology learning and providing. But mostly, there's a lot of rules that we all as a collective have agreed upon over a long period of time. And so, just like we get symbols in mediumship, I saw a plant. What I don't know. This one's so weird, right? Oh, that's the plant. Astrology is like a living synchronicity symbol that it it's so powerful that it's embedded in our unconscious minds.
Mm,
And so we repeat some things, but we create new versions of a similar story, and we have that free will. But there's a lot more left brain that goes into it,
hmm.
but you do need right brain. Whereas mediumship, you definitely need a little bit more right brain than you do need left. But I'm not using, if you want to say energy, I'm not using, if you guys call it the power, it's not a word I use. But it's not that at all. But it really does help. And if you look at Babylonian astrology, they said that the mystics channeled these interpretations long ago. But the whole idea was that astrology is sort of this map that's left behind, that we didn't have to use psychic ability or intuitive ability or spirit communication, that we
Hmm.
could chill out and have this map left behind for us to navigate as a divination tool without us utilizing energy or exhausting. And that's kind of the nice part of it.
Hmm.
Um, but it does exist the same way mediumship exists in the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps a little bit.
I hope it helps people out there who might be curious. Um, but you have all this work. You're finding it very meaningful. How has that changed you, Mark, the human being?
To definitely be kinder,
Hmm.
to work on the human me for sure. Um, all the unconscious behaviors, the flaws or things like this, we call the shadow work.
Right.
As I kept going, that became more and more and more and more important for me. And that there is a thing called in life that you could have bliss or love. And that's real. And it's not just gimmicky or a Hallmark card or cheesy or cliche. And so, I feel like a lot of people, but definitely me, a lot of my life I was living unconsciously.
Yeah.
And so it's made me not live unconsciously. Even though in my work I'm using the unconscious, it's forced me to say, no, in your human life, develop more meaningful relationships. Those things are important. And strive for bliss. That has been an overwhelming theme from the spirit world, that even though there's a lot of disappointments in life, it doesn't always have to be that way. And you can rewrite your future to not be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. There's not this horrible death sentence that a lot of people think it is in life, that it's so rough and crummy. We do have the ability to change it. And
Absolutely. 100%.
um, I guess I would add on that I feel that specifically the style of mediumship that I do, which is more so classical mediumship,
Hmm.
that you are more immersed with blending with the other world, that it should change you. It's almost like, You should, as a medium, touch the divine, or the divine should touch you. It should be both. And I feel that's a little bit missing, to be honest with you, today in a lot of mediumship. It just feels so mechanical, so information, and there's no soul to soul. And that experience, I think, changed me psychologically, though, because my training in psychology didn't talk about shadow work at all. In fact, if anything, it would say just fix everyone else and never, almost ignore the
Yourself.
shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never taught shadow work, Carl Jung, in school. It was kind of like, this guy existed. Who cares? We got these other things. And when I worked in clinical psych, um, people that were more experienced than me, they didn't support that type of thought at all. It's complete opposite. So it wasn't logical for me to try to improve myself as an individual personally. It wasn't at all logical. It came from only doing mediumship as a service and philosophy and the soul to soul and spirit world touching me to start for me to change and be more kinder and look for a better quality of life in my personal life with my relationships.
And so when you say shadow work, because sometimes there is a misconception, we talked about this uh, several weeks back about how people can misunderstand what it means. They think it means that they can forgive and move forward and all this stuff. That's a piece of it, but what does it mean to you? What does shadow work mean to you? And how
It
does
means
that help you as a soul?
it means truly looking at anything that you are ignoring, whether that's literally your financial situation, whether that's how people treated you, but more importantly, how you've treated them, how you treat yourself.
Hmm.
Even the good things. There's a lot of people that ignore compliments. You're good at this, you're good at that. That goes into the shadow. That's not good. Literally anything you ignore from yourself, from others, from life, it goes into the shadow. And forgiveness and compassion, more so compassion, I think is even stronger than forgiveness. Because sometimes when people say forgiveness, they're kind of forgiving just themselves and they're not seeing oneness.
Right.
True shadow work is supposed to make you understand the concept of oneness. Because when you're ignoring, okay, let's say I stole Cindy's car 10 years ago. And I'm like, I'm a good person and I never did that. That's shadow. Goes right into the shadow, right? Cindy deserved it. She was a jerk to me. I did bad things to Cindy, but I'm justifying it. Shadow. And the reason I did is I think Cindy's separate from me. We're not connected at all. Everything is connected. I wouldn't have behaved like that in the first place if I felt we were one.
Well, you wouldn't have behaved like that in the first place if we were one, but more so if you respected yourself.
True.
Then you would understand how to respect other people if you could respect yourself first. That's the oneness too, right?
Absolutely. It's a paradox.
It starts with self and then it moves out. And I've been trying to tell people in my lives, it's like, you have to start here. It's not the Cinderella complex, guys. This is the person you start with. Then you go inward to the soul, and the soul then moves outward, and then you start understanding things a lot better. Um, anyway, whatever. Don't need to listen to me. I'm here to listen to you. Okay. Um, for the developing people, right? Even yourself, if you could sit down with Mark from the very beginning of your development, what would you tell little Mark at maybe 9 months old?
I would say more dad jokes.
Oh, you would?
Yeah. I would say no, it's a joke.
More cowbell?
Um, I would say trust the spirit first and humans last. Just like you have it, and don't let them sway you. That's one. Secondly, as a professional, whatever you see out there, don't just assume that's what is.
Right. Right.
Especially the fireworks and the good stuff. It'll be a bit.
I'm gonna tell you something when I hit stop. Tell you something so bad. Okay. Is that all? Sorry.
No, that would be it.
Uh, After all these years of communicating with people who've died, and I don't even like the word dive, transitioned. I like that word. Don't you like that word?
Yes.
What do you believe what do you believe they most want those of us who are still here to understand?
To truly, if you don't have a life that you feel is full of love, make that the most important priority, and whatever is stopping you from that, just work, even if it takes a while. It may take a while. These things don't happen overnight, but even it's methodical, do it. Whether it's toxic relationships, whether it's financial, whether it's health, do it. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, because there's nothing else that's more important. You don't have to accept how things were as how things are going to be. I really think that's really the only reason they come through, is to inspire. I think we talk about healing a lot, and mediumship and spirit communication can heal, but it's actually more inspirational, the communication between the two worlds. That, yes, I still exist and I love you, and that can help them, but what does this do for you going forward? Are you going to live a life that you have love and are giving out love back? There is something kind of new to me, to be totally transparent, and it's not easy for me. Hasn't been easy for me. But every day I truly try to send compassion to people who probably 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I would say I'm not going to do that. I'm just not. So it's a everyday thing for me that I would call them enemies if it was 20 years ago. And I
Eh,
would not wish them any good luck. But I force myself to, because I really do believe that we can literally change this planet and our own personal lives if we don't just wait for it to come to us, that we have to give it away. And I think that's the reason why it exists.
Okay, fair enough. I believe that too. And I do the same thing. People who've done me wrong, I've wished them well, especially in my gratitude at night when I go to sleep. And sometimes I fall asleep because I'm really tired before I get to say I'll get through the whole list. That's all right. I still do it anyway.
Good.
Thank you so
Sometimes you
much.
have to do it. I
What?
was going to say, sometimes you have to do it like when you're driving to get coffee or running an errand.
That's true too. Yeah, anytime you can think of it. That doesn't always work for me specifically, but for you it might. Um, so I want to thank you for coming on the pod today. If people want to reach you, if they're interested in, furthering their development, because we're always developing, it's never ending. If they want to reach out to you for a reading, if they just want to talk to you and shoot the shit, where should they reach you?
So please go to my website, markthechicagomedium.com. Markthechicagomedium.com. I have lots of things there. I have my social media links. I have services, classes. And if I'm doing an event, I'll post that too. So yeah, go there, please, please, please. That's my primary area to get a hold of me.
Perfect. You heard it. And I'll link that up, in the podcast episode and stuff like that for the viewers, the listeners, and even for you, Mark. Just to be like, did she do it? I'm just kidding. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this week. I will listen. I'll see you or listen, whatever you want to say it. I'll see you next week. Bye.